I like reviewing phones after they've been released, and had I made this review when I wanted to earlier this year, I would have missed out on so many things. So let's talk about the Samsung S22 Ultra, what it's like using it in 2026, a little about its future, and about the numerous times that this phone literally locked itself and made it pointless. Hello everyone, this is Matt from Real World Review, and yes we can. Let's start with the cameras. After all, there are 4 cameras on the back and a total of 180 megapixels of camera. Given the sizes of the sensors, it would be about a 1-inch sensor in total if you did squish them all together. That would be larger than the iPhone 16 Pro's camera sets, but there's only 3 cameras on the back. Anyways, the front camera is a focusable 40 megapixel sensor, which is actually larger in size and megapixels to the S23 Ultra and even the current S26 Ultra. Personally, I think the large megapixel count is a little too much for the front camera and probably why it got downgraded to 12 megapixels in the future models, but shooting 4K 60 frames per second video is nice on here, and the photos are also really good. Still has that Samsung look if you know what that is. It's cool, but the main attraction is a rear camera set, starting with the 12 megapixel ultra wide camera, which seems to be the same as the S24 Ultra, which isn't really too surprising. This focusable 1/2.55 inch sensor on paper sounds fair, as these specs are what main cameras were prior to 2020. Being able to focus definitely helps, and like all cameras on this phone, 4K 60 frames per second is an option if you are one of those people that films 120 degrees on this ultra-wide camera, or I guess it would be less because of that crop. There's no optical image stabilization, but there's actually no phone camera with optical image stabilization in the ultra-wide camera. Ask Gemini or ChatGPT all you want, they'll mix up the ultra-wide camera with the main camera and gaslight you into thinking that that's actually fact. Speaking of, this 108 megapixel actually optically stabilized space zoom camera, but not, is the main attraction, being very similar to the S20 Ultra and S21 Ultra, but at a wider 23 millimeters. Besides the slightly larger 200 megapixel and barely wider open aperture of the S26 Ultra, it doesn't get much better than this. Shooting 8K 24 frames per second video on this thing is definitely nothing new, something that the S20 Ultra had, but like that phone, stick to 4K 60 frames per second if you want high quality video. But the photos are spectacular. Don't do the 2x zoom though, as there's no sensor cropping in here. Might be better to shoot 108 megapixel and crop after, but I chose to do neither. Instead, you click into the 3x telephoto camera, which is a 10 megapixel sensor that is optically stabilized as well. But it's still actually a big enough sensor that cropping to the 3x on the main camera would actually look worse, in theory. But maybe that's not too far enough. Instead, we jump to the 10x zoom of the 10 megapixel periscope camera, which is the Ultra staple. Recapping that all of the cameras shoot 4K 60 frames per second video, this is one of the best and worst cameras, as it is an f4.9 lens, which is pretty reasonable, as you would pay good money for a wide aperture camera lens at 230 millimeters or similar on a full-size camera. That said, this means that you will need more light, so the image might look gray even if you're shooting it in broad daylight. Samsung gave up on fighting physics, not improving the aperture on the S23 Ultra and moving to a 5x zooming sensor instead on the S24 Ultra and newer. That said, I really don't blame them. That 3x to 10x jump is pretty big, but making the 3x a 48 megapixel sensor so you can crop in at 6x at 12 megapixels would have been a better option than dropping the 10x altogether. Overall, like I said, 180 megapixels of cameras with 2 cameras that I enjoyed using, but honestly I don't see a reason or how to really improve those besides bumping up the megapixel count to 108 megapixels each sensor or 200 megapixel main and 108 megapixels for the telephotos. That said, more megapixels doesn't always mean better. More megapixels in a telephoto sensor kinda does though. Oh, by the way, that 100 times space zoom, yeah, looks terrible and doesn't use the main camera. Fun fact. This phone is not all cameras. No. This is more than a camera phone. This is a powerhouse. This is the mitochondria, but this is not a science class, so let's move on. Looking at the cameras on the back, we have the bumps for all, as well as another for the laser autofocusing and camera flash unit. There's also a hidden microphone in one of these cameras. The Gorilla Glass Victus Plus back is clearly curved and has a matte finish, which I personally enjoy. Still slippery though. Then we have an aluminum frame with a microphone on the top, nothing on the left, volume and power buttons on the right, as well as the 5G ultra wideband antenna if you do have that. And the bottom is where the S Pen slots in, as well as a SIM tray and another microphone, a USB-C 3.2 port, and the bottom speaker that gives you a stereo feel with the top one. Sounds great. Under the earpiece speaker slit, we have the curved 6.8-inch 1440p OLED panel that runs at 120 Hz and hits 1750 nits peak brightness or 500 nits in manual mode, which makes sense because it does feel pretty bright. This is also protected by Gorilla Glass Victus Plus as well, though I use the word protected loosely. There's that 40 megapixel front camera hole punch, which allows for face unlock, unsurprisingly. There's also an ultrasonic fingerprint scanner at the bottom that's hit or miss for me, and with the screen protector, more of the miss side. This is definitely a premium experience viewing content on this thing, but the curved areas do give off some crazy glare, and adding a tempered glass screen protector like I did definitely doesn't help this problem. This phone runs Android 16, which is strange, and getting Android 17 is questionable, but it definitely deserves it. The Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 is great on this phone, and don't listen to the overheating exaggerations. All phones get hot when you use them, that's kind of the whole point, especially if you get the Samsung Exynos 2200 version. This pairs with 8GB of RAM if you have the 128GB of UFS 3.1 storage on this, but if you're smart and you get the 256 or 512 like mine, or the 1TB version, it comes with 12GB of RAM. To be honest, 8GB of RAM is probably fine, but given that it's an Ultra phone, 12GB with this fast processor just makes sense. And even now, there's rare times when this phone slows down, and I will say that I've used other phones with the Plus variant or the same chip, and this phone feels slower, but not by much. To the average person, you probably won't notice it, even in heavy gaming. Like all Ultra phones, this has a 5000 mAh cell, and like all Ultra phones, this has fast charging but never hits it. This one being 45 watts of wired and 15 watts of wireless charging. Personally, I haven't seen this go too far over 30 watts of wired charging, but it's honestly not an issue because 30 watts is pretty good. You also get reverse wireless charging, which is nice to have, but almost never comes in handy for me. Maybe you'll have better use cases than I do. As for battery life, it's not great, and I believe I actually replaced the battery on this one. I'll never understand how people get 10 hours of screen on time out of anything. Even my Mac right now is saying 7 to 17 watts of power use right now, so it wouldn't even last 10 hours with a 99 watt hour battery, meaning a phone with a 19.4 watt hour battery can? I doubt it. Connectivity-wise, we get Wi-Fi 6E, Bluetooth 5.2, and 5G ultra-wideband, as well as another ultra-wideband for tracking the phone and items whenever that comes in handy. I mentioned the S Pen, and just like DeX support, it's great to have it. Feels gimmicky to me. Hey, calm down. Okay, let me finish. It feels gimmicky to me, so you're going to have to rely on other videos to tell you more about it. Even though this is a 6.43-inch tall phone, the S22 Ultra is actually still taller, but this is heavier at 229 grams of bulk thanks to those cameras and battery. It's also water resistant, IP68, but not anymore. That seal has definitely worn down by now. Now, like I said, this phone is great. Besides the sizing and weight, this is a spectacular phone to use with very little downsides outside of that. But there's a reason I said reality instead of usage, and that's because this phone is a mess. Looking at the pricing, this is on the cheaper side, around $300 currently, but of course going to 256 gigabytes of storage or higher might cost you more, while the S23 Ultra is about $100 more and starts with 256 gigabytes. And the others are $100 or $200 over each other, which makes the S22 Ultra great value, but for how long? I could also tell you that there are some major issues with this phone that will cause boot loops, and sometimes the phone will just die, randomly powering on sometimes and then not. But of course, those aren't my phones that I'm seeing, but it's not like I see every phone model doing this. When searching for this issue, you might be able to find something, but this is very interesting. A class action lawsuit filed this year stating the One UI 6.1 update broke people's phones, and I will say that I did see this happening, but it was with aftermarket screens getting damaged or not working after the update. No, this does not cause a green line, that's just people breaking their screen. But another situation is the MDM lock, which maybe a loophole being taken advantage of with that system, but these are all things found in 2026, which again is why I like making these videos, because this information in this section would have not been in a 2022 video when the phone came out. Yeah, this 4-year-old phone is still going, but for how long? We're already getting quarterly security patches, so One UI 8.5 might be the last update, with Android 17 being questionable whether the S22 series will actually get it. As for repairs, lots of cheap parts out there like the back, battery, and charging port, but the screen is horrible. Either you find a screen at a reasonable-ish $200 plus, or a cheaper one and it's some basic 60Hz heavily bezeled OLED panel that costs more than the $20 that it's worth. Having to tell someone to buy from a site just for that site to start selling aftermarket parts in place of OEM quality is beyond frustrating. But I guess don't break the phone and be careful when you're changing the battery. I call this phone boring, and I will die on that hill because I'm not the only one that thinks when a phone is great like this, it becomes boring. In this case, a boring phone is good. The OS is great, the cameras are great, the screen is great, everything is great and nothing feels like a struggle, and that's what makes it boring. But at the same time, knowing that this phone can boot loop at any time, like my Samsung X-Cover 6 Pro did, it's kind of alarming. And that's my review of the Samsung S22 Ultra, the great boring phone. I meant to start working on this video a long time ago, but I'm glad that I waited. But what do you think about this phone? Let me know, and as always, thanks for joining the 1%, and thanks for watching.